Okay, we are in part 6, Guns Under the Table. We just finished the subsection with the sentence, "and so." His smile broadened, no doubt in response to the look on Frank's face, which Frank could feel hardening over the front of his skull. We have a lot to discuss. Frank sees the signing of a treaty with compromises, which tries to slow emigration from Earth and certain investments, all for the benefit of Maya Twat Nova, because he would really like to impress his hoe. Andy Jans offers Frank a job. No. Oh, wait, yeah, he does. Andy Jans offers Frank a political position. Maya gets intimate with Frank again. His plan worked. But later, they have another falling out. Sax talks to Frank about how the new treaty will limit terraforming, but Frank corrects it. No, this is all wrong. But Frank disagrees. Anne tells Frank she thinks he did the best he could with the treaty. And Frank laughs because he was trying to impress so many people, and the only person who was happy with him is fucking Anne. Anne tells Frank she thinks he did the best he could with the treaty. Around them, more structures are being built. Andy Jans says he's looking for more office space. Thank you so much, Purple Wayne. Honestly, I enjoy book clubs so much, especially with viewers like you. Itaku, thank you for 72 months. Welcome. You're always here on Monday Book Club. I liked the summary you had last week. I should have saved that one. It was like... I like these summaries too. It's getting very tricky to do summaries. Even I am trying not to put my own interpretation over it, even though I think I have the correct one. But I guess we'll find out in about 200 more pages. No. The main point of the last section, in my opinion, is not that while Frank was trying to limit the power of the transnats, he ends up accepting a job from them. And they are looking for office space on Mars as if nothing has changed for them at all. The last part of that is true. Frank literally only cares about control. Frank just got done murdering his best friend, who many people think of them as brothers. He just murdered his brother. All because they're fighting over a girl. And Frank thinks that John is going to control the planet in the wrong way more than Frank. Like, he thought John was too idealistic. Not that he thought John was gonna do the wrong thing. No. He didn't disagree with what John is saying, apparently, from what I've read in part 6. He didn't even disagree with John. He literally thinks that John was incompetent, so he had to kill him so that he could get the girl and control the planet the right way to get things done. I did that too, but in the womb. It was a glorious battle. I think John and Frank were a bit more one-sided. I think John was clearly the stronger fetus. But Frank, he's gloomy, he's moody, he's misunderstood. Sao CS, thank you for 27 months. Al-Kahira is the name for Mars in Arabic and Malaysian and Indonesian. The latter two languages got it from the former. Look at a globe and see how far the Arabs' religion spread. The whole middle of the world, from West Africa to the West Pacific. And most of that in a single century. Yes, it was an empire in its time. And like all empires, after death, it had a long half-life. The Arabs who lived out of Arabia were called Maharis, and the Arabs who came to Mars, the Kahiran Maharis. When they arrived on Mars, a good number of them began to wander Vastitas Borealis, the northern Badia, and the Great Escarpment. These wanderers were mostly Bedouin Arabs, and they traveled in caravans, in a deliberate recreation of a life that had disappeared on Earth. People who had lived in cities all their lives went to Mars and moved around in rovers and tents. The excuses for their ceaseless travel included the hunt for metals, areology, and trade. But it seemed clear that the important thing was the travel, the life itself. I don't understand the moral dilemma of colonizing Mars if it's lifeless. Well, sir, you clearly missed the first 2/3 of the book. God damn it. I'll try to explain that to you though if you stick around. I've just gotta keep reading today. I'll explain that after today. We can talk about it. Frank Chalmers joined the old Zake Toucans. I'm so sorry. The Zake Toucans caravan. Frank Chalmers joined it a month after the treaty was signed. Oh yeah, they just got the new treaty approved, bro. That's it. That's the summary. They got the new treaty approved, bro. Frank Chalmers joined the old Zake Toucans caravan a month after the treaty was signed, in the northern autumn of M15. July 2057, in other words. July 2057. The northern autumn of M15. For a long time, he wandered with this caravan over the broken slopes of the Great Escarpment. He worked on his Arabic and helped with their mining and took meteorological, fuck. I just watched Hassan struggle with this word. There's no way this is happening to me today. Meteorological observations. The caravan was composed of actual Bedouins from Al-Alad Ali, the western coast of Egypt. They had lived north of the area that the Egyptian government had named for the New Valley Project. After a search for oil, discovered a water aquifer holding an amount equal to 1,000 years of the Nile's flow. Even before the discovery of the gerontological treatment, the Egyptian population problem had been severe. With 96% of the country desert and 99% of the population in the Nile Valley, it was inevitable that the hordes relocated to the New Valley Project. It was inevitable that the hordes relocated in the New Valley Project would overwhelm the Bedouins and their entirely distinct culture. The Bedouins wouldn't even call themselves Egyptians, and despised the Nile Egyptians as spineless and immoral. But that did not keep the Egyptians from crowding north from the New Valley Project into Al-Wad Ali. Bedouins in the other Arab countries had taken the side of these overwhelmed outposts of their culture. And when the Arab Commonwealth started a Mars program and bought space on the continuous Earth-to-Mars shuttle fleet, they asked Egypt to give preference to their Western Bedouins. The Egyptian government had only been too happy to oblige and clear the region of its troublesome minority. So here they were, Bedouins on Mars, wandering the world-wrapping northern desert. The weather observations piqued Frank's interest in climatology like none of the scientists' talk had ever done. Like none of the scientists' talk ever had. The weather on the escarpment was often violent, with katabatic winds rushing downslope and colliding with the Syrtis trade winds to create tall, fast, red tornadoes or onslaughts of gritty hail. Currently, the atmosphere was around 130 millibars in the summer, in a mix about 80% carbon dioxide and 10% oxygen. The remainder mostly argon. It wasn't clear yet whether they were going to be able to overwhelm the CO2 with oxygen and the other gases, but Sachs seemed satisfied with their progress so far. Certainly on a windy day on the escarpment, it was clear that the air was thickening. It had some real heft to it. It threw heavy sand and darkened the afternoons to the color of a scab. And in the hardest gales, the gusts could knock you down quite easily. Frank timed one katabatic gust at 600 kilometers per hour. Luckily, it was part of such a hard general blow that everyone was in rovers when it happened. My copy says the remainder mostly nitrogen from the new nitro conversion plants. Seems bold. Either way, I'm glad Sachs is happy. Because I'm surprised Sachs didn't have John murdered. No, wait, he would never do that. They were pretty close. I don't know, I was just trying to make a joke. Wheeze. Speaking of hard blows, where's Maya? I don't know, dude. You made me think she was going to be a lot bigger part of these next few chapters. She's lurking. She's around there somewhere. Her and Frank just broke up, so that means we won't see her until the next book. The caravan was a mobile mining operation. Fuck. Jacques Hare. Thank you, Jacques. caravan was a mobile mining operation. Metals and ore-bearing minerals were being discovered in all kinds of locations and concentrations on Mars. But one thing the Arab prospectors were discovering was that a lot of sulfides were very lightly scattered on the Great Escarpment and the flats immediately below it. Most of these deposits were in concentrations and total quantities that would not justify the use of conventional mining methods. And so the Arabs engaged in pioneering. Sorry, not pioneering, comma. So the Arabs were engaged in pioneering new extraction and processing procedures. They had built an array of mobile equipment, altering construction vehicles and exploration rovers to suit their purpose. The resulting machines were big, segmented, and distinctly insectile, looking like things out of a truck mechanic's nightmare. These creatures wandered the Great Escarpment in loose caravans, seeking the diffuse surface areas of stratiform copper deposits, preferably those with high amounts of tetrahedrite or chalcocite in them, so that they could recover silver as a byproduct of the copper. When they located one of these, they would stop for what they called the harvesting. While they did this, prospector rovers would range ahead along the escarpment on expeditions of a week or 10 days, following the old flows and rifts. When Frank had arrived, he had been welcomed by Zeke, who told him to do whatever work he chose. So Frank commandeered one of the prospector rovers and took it out on solo expeditions. He would spend a week out, puttering around on automatic search, reading the seismograph and the samplers and the weather instruments, doing an occasional boring, watching the skies. I think that's what Frank needed all along. Poor Frank. He's really a tragic character. And a murderer. Hello, Blitz the Clown. My horse will only come out of her stable after dark. She's becoming a nightmare. I don't know what we'd do without you. Did you say Jacques Hare? Yeah. That was the name of one of my assistants, right? I don't remember their names. They're all Jacques to me. All over both worlds. I wasn't even reading out of the book. I was fixing my hair. I was making a joke. All over both worlds, Bedouin settlements looked drab from the outside. When they abandoned tents, their neighborhoods took on a windowless, thick-walled look, as if perpetually hunched over to protect themselves from the desert heat Only when you got inside their homes did one see what was protected. The courtyards, the gardens, the fountains, the birds, the staircases, the mirrors, the arabesques. The great escarpment was strange country, cut by north-south canyon systems, marred by old craters, overrun by lava flows, broken into hummocks and karsts and mesas and ridges. And all of them on a steep slope, so that on top of any rock or prominence, one could see far into the north. One could see far down to the north. In his days of solitary travel, Frank let the prospector program make most of the decisions and sat watching the land roll by. Silent, stark, huge, torn like the dead past itself. The escarpment is ridged for her pleasure. I just ruined that beautiful sentence. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I'm a streamer. Frank let the prospector, in his days of solitary travel, Frank let the prospector program make most of the decisions and sat watching the land roll by. Silent, stark, huge, torn like the dead past itself. Days would pass, and the shadows wheel. The winds swirled upslope in the morning, and downslope in the late afternoons. Clouds stacked the sky, from low fog balls bouncing over the rocks to high cirrus shavings, with the occasional thunderhead spanning the whole distance. Solid masses of cloud, 20,000 meters high. Heard that somewhere before. Occasionally, big cirrus, big shavings. Big cirrus bit shavings at Mars Cloud Emporium. Fog balls bouncing. Bouncing balls tour. Okay, I'm fine. I'm good now. Occasionally he would turn on the TV and watch the Arabic news channel. Sometimes in the silence of the mornings, he would talk back to the TV. There was part of him that was outraged at the stupidity of the media and of the events they packaged. The stupidity of the human race, playing out its spectacle. Except that the vast bulk of humanity never appeared on video. Never once in their lives. Not even in the crowd scenes when a camera swept over the mob. Back there, the Terran... Sorry. There's part of him that was outraged at the stupidity of the media, the events they packaged, the stupidity of the human race playing out its spectacle. Except that the vast bulk of humanity never appeared on video. Never once in their lives, not even in the crowd scenes when a camera swept the mob. Back there, the Terran past still lived on in enormous regions, where village life was plodding on and as it always had. Maybe that was wisdom, held on to by old wives and shamans. Maybe. But it was hard to believe. Because look what happened when they gathered in cities. Idiots on video. History in the making. One can say that the lengthening of human life must, by definition, be a great boon. The lengthening of human life must, by definition, be a great boon. These things made him laugh. Haven't you ever heard of secondary effects, asshole? One night, he watched a report on the fertilization of the Antarctic Ocean with iron dust, which was to act as a dietary supplement to phytoplankton, a population that was shrinking at an alarming rate for no obvious reason. A great boon. Did somebody just say I murdered John Boone? It's not true. Which was to act as a dietary supplement to phytoplankton, a population which was shrinking at an alarming rate for no obvious reason. The iron dust was dumped out of planes. It looked like they were fighting some kind of submarine fire. The project would cost tens of billions of dollars a year and would have to be continued in perpetuity. But it had been calculated that a century of fertilization would reduce the global concentration of carbon dioxide by 15%, plus or minus 10%. And given the ongoing warming and the subsequent threat to the coastal cities, not to mention the death of most of the world's coral reefs, the project had been judged worth it. Anne's going to love this, Frank muttered. Now they're terraforming Earth. Each vocal outburst he made untied a knot in his chest. I have to pee so bad. He came to understand that no one was watching him. No one was listening. The tiny imaginary audience inside his head did not exist.